The tension was thick in the air the moment Jeff Bezos took his seat on the Global Economic Summit panel. He'd live across multiple countries. Sitting across from him was President Ibrahim Traoré, copyright of Burkina Faso, known for his bold statements and passionate advocacy for African sovereignty. Things began innocently enough, with pleasantries exchanged in light conversation about innovation and technology. But the tone abruptly shifted when Bezos, perhaps trying to inject humor or assert dominance, made a comment that immediately drew gasps from parts of the audience. "Well," he said with a smirk, "it's hard to talk about tech infrastructure in a region where power outages are more common than emails." It wasn't just condescending, it was dismissive of decades of African resilience and progress. The host chuckled nervously, trying to keep the conversation flowing. But Traoré, copyright, eyes locked on Bezos, and the mood froze. President Traoré, copyright, leaned forward slowly, his expression unreadable. For a moment, he didn't say anything. The silence was more powerful than any words. Then he spoke in a firm, deliberate tone that cut through the awkward laughter. "Mr. Bezos, I represent a nation that has overcome colonial legacies, economic sabotage, and global indifference. We may not have trillion-dollar corporations, but we have intelligence, resourcefulness, and dignity." The audience leaned in. Bezos blinked but said nothing. Traoré, copyright wasn't done. "The tools of oppression have merely changed faces," he continued, "from armed invaders to economic gatekeepers in Silicon Valley." There was no applause yet, just stunned silence. It was clear that something unexpected was unfolding. Without raising his voice, Traoré, copyright cited real statistics. He spoke of how Burkina Faso has built solar-powered education centers in rural areas using local materials and labor. He described how communities were using blockchain for secure land ownership records, bypassing corrupt intermediaries. "We don't need to imitate your model to succeed," he said. "We need respect, not ridicule." At this point, murmurs began to ripple through the audience. Cameras zoomed in on Bezos, who offered a tight-lipped smile, clearly realizing he must judge the moment. The moderator tried to regain control, but Traoré, copyright wasn't finished. "You mocked an entire continent, but I ask you, how many African workers made your wealth possible?" Bezos finally responded, awkwardly, "Look, I didn't mean to offend. I admire African culture and its people." His tone was diplomatic, but it rang hollow. The damage had been done. Traoré, copyright replied calmly, "It's easy to admire a culture while exploiting its labor. Your admiration costs us nothing. Fair trade, respect, and investment do." The audience, now visibly shifting in energy, erupted into a mixture of applause and audible reactions. On social media, the moment was already trending. Clips were being shared with captions like "Africa Speaks Back" and Traoré, copyright dismantles Bezos live. For the first time in the broadcast, it was clear who the real leader in the room was, and it wasn't the billionaire. Other panelists began to weigh in, and surprisingly, many sided with Traoré, copyright. A South American delegate voiced solidarity, saying their nations too had endured years of Western economic condescension. "There's innovation across the global South," she said, "but platforms like this rarely give us equal footing." The mood shifted from one of corporate dominance to a genuine, uncomfortable reflection on how the tech elite view the rest of the world. Bezos looked cornered but tried to maintain composure. "We've invested millions in African startups," he said defensively. But Traoré, copyright wasn't interested in charity statistics. "That's not partnership," he said, "that's leverage." Backstage, reports later revealed Bezos's team was rattled. Advisors were frantically messaging PR experts as the online backlash intensified. Influencers, journalists, and even academics began dissecting Traoré, copyright as remarks in real time. Meanwhile, the African Union released a statement praising the president for defending the dignity of the continent against outdated narratives. The moment wasn't just viral, it was seismic. University professors began using the clip in classrooms. African youths proudly shared memes and quotes from the exchange. This wasn't just about Bezos anymore, it was about reclaiming a voice. Traoré, copyright's rise to global prominence wasn't built on social media strategy or public relations. communication stunts. It was rooted in years of grassroots activism and a firm belief in Pan-African unity. Born into modest means, he had grown up witnessing the gaps between the continent's natural wealth and its people's poverty. That contradiction fueled his vision for a Burkina Faso that doesn't beg for respect, but demands it. This confrontation with Bezos wasn't his first bold moment, but it was by far the most visible, and the world was watching closely. The next day, Bezos attempted to regain narrative control with a post on X, formerly Twitter, stating, "Africa's future is bright, and I respect President Traoré copyright as passion." But the comments section was brutal. Users accused him of being patronizing, performative, and only responding after being called out. Memes mocked his original comment, replacing emails with traditional drums in Amazon offices. It was internet justice at full force. The man who built his empire through efficiency and control had lost both on one of the world's biggest stages. Meanwhile, Traoré copyright didn't gloat. In an official statement released by his office, he simply said, "I thank all those who heard our voice yesterday. My mission is not to win arguments, but to build futures." That dignified response only elevated him further. African leaders from Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, and South Africa echoed his sentiments in public messages. Some even challenged Western corporations to directly engage with African governments on fairer terms. This wasn't just a diplomatic reply, it was the early tremor of a potential power shift in how Africa interacts with global tech powers. Media outlets scrambled to secure interviews with Traoré copyright. When he finally appeared on a BBC broadcast days later, he was humble and concise. "My words were not meant to shame," he said. "They were meant to awaken." That phrase alone went viral. #Awaken with Traoré began trending, symbolizing a collective call to consciousness about how the world views African nations. Even critics admitted the exchange had started a much-needed conversation. Some commentators likened it to when Mandela challenged Clinton in the 90s, set an unexpected, respectful yet firm demand for equality. Weeks later, a summit on African innovation received record international attendance. Tech giants who once showed lukewarm interest now scrambled to be seen engaging constructively. Panels focused on ethical investment, digital sovereignty, and mutual growth. The sudden pivot in tone was undeniable. Whether they meant it or were merely reacting to PR damage, companies realized the stakes had changed. Traoré copyright's words had shifted the center of gravity, at least temporarily, from boardrooms to village-built solar labs. Jeff Bezos, for his part, maintained a lower profile in the weeks following. He cancelled 2 media appearances and postponed a tech policy keynote. Sources close to his team admitted privately that they underestimated the backlash. He thought it would be a light-hearted panel. One aide was quoted saying, "But what he got instead was a global lesson in dignity, power, and presence." It wasn't just about what was said but who said it, where, and how the world chose to listen. The clash between Bezos and Traoré copyright will likely go down as one of those unexpected turning points in public discourse. It reminded people that intelligence and insight are not limited to Western capitals or billionaire boardrooms. Sometimes, the most profound truth comes not from the loudest voice, but the most grounded one. Traoré copyright didn't trace his voice. He didn't insult. He simply told the truth backed by vision, facts, and lived experience. And the world, perhaps unexpectedly, heard him. In the end, it wasn't about humiliation or victory. It was about visibility. For once, the global narrative didn't sideline Africa, it centered it. And not through crisis or pity, but through command and clarity. President Traoré copyright reminded everyone watching that mockery has no place in serious conversation, and that dignity isn't something you earn from the West, it's something you stand in, unapologetically. As the panel ended and the cameras faded, a new dialogue had begun, one where Africa speaks and the world listens.